Legal storm swirling around in the United States involving former President Donald Trump. Former U.S. President and 2024 presidential hopeful Donald Trump's indictment for efforts to overturn the 2020 election has thrown America into uncharted waters. The irony is that Trump may not be allowed to vote next year, but the indictment does not in any way bar him from contesting the 2024 election and seek another term as the President of the United States. What happens though if Trump becomes president and later gets convicted? Many fear it could trigger a constitutional crisis, as the U.S. Constitution and law currently have no clear answers to that question, simply because there is no precedent for this very complicated situation. Interestingly, while most Republicans have either stayed silent or come out in support of Trump, terming his indictment a witch hunt, Mike Pence, who was Trump's vice president and is now his rival in the 2024 race, has criticized him. So what happens next? Well, for now, Trump is due to appear in a Washington court later today in connection with this latest indictment, which is believed to be the most serious one yet. Prosecutors will outline the 4 conspiracy and obstruction counts, and a judge will set bail conditions. For the first time ever, the United States is set to put on trial a former president for trying to destroy the country's democratic system and plotting to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The 4 counts include conspiracy to defraud the United States of America by employing dishonesty, fraud and deceit. Trump has been accused of spreading lies about election fraud. The charges follow an investigation into the Capitol Hill riots on 6th January 2021, when the very seat of American democracy was attacked and placed under siege by a rampaging mob comprising Trump supporters. The indictment says Trump was determined to remain in power despite having lost an election. He tried to remain in office and prevent the peaceful transition of power. Prosecutors said that for 2 months after his election loss, Trump spread lies to create an intense national atmosphere of mistrust and anger and erode public faith in the administration of the election. The congressional panel, which was created to investigate the 6th January insurrection at Capitol Hill, concluded last December recommending criminal charges against Donald Trump. The committee conducted more than 1,000 interviews, collected more than 1 million documents, and interviewed key witnesses. In public hearings, investigators aired dramatic and damning footage making the case that Trump was directly responsible for summoning what became a violent mob, despite understanding that he had lost the election. The Trump campaign reacted by saying this indictment amounted to an interference by the Biden administration in the next presidential election. They went on to say, and I quote, "The lawlessness of these persecutions of President Trump and his supporters is reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s and other authoritarian dictatorial regimes." The latest charges mean Trump has been impeached twice, arrested twice, and indicted thrice over attempted election subversion, hush money payments to a porn actor, and the alleged mishandling of classified documents. Meanwhile, the man leading the inquiry, Special Counsel Jack Smith, is pledging to seek a speedy trial. But Trump is looking at a packed and complicated calendar for 2024. The former president's trial in New York on criminal charges over hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels will begin in March next year. His criminal trial in Florida for retaining national security documents at his Mar-a-Lago property and obstructing the Justice Department's efforts to retrieve them will take place in May next year. And don't forget, the Iowa caucuses that open the Republican race for the 2024 presidential nomination are scheduled to take place in January. And here's what is significant. Trump's indictments will not bar him from seeking re-election as the President of the United States. While some argue that it would be highly unusual for a thrice indicted candidate to win the Republican presidential nomination, consider this: Trump is still the favorite to be the Republican candidate in the 2024 presidential polls. Opinion polls show he's closely matched with President Joe Biden in a hypothetical rematch. The Republicans have portrayed Trump's indictment as partisan and a witch hunt, clearly reflecting the former president's strong grip on his party. And remember, its base voters have reacted to his previous indictments by redoubling their support and boosting his fundraising. And given the amount of time it could take, some have pointed out that there's a possibility that Trump could have already been elected president by the time this trial starts. The long-awaited charges are the first related to actions taken by an American president in office and set up a collision course between the justice system and a potentially volatile election set to take place in November 2024. Secret Service says it's working with Capitol Police and local authorities to ensure Trump's safety during his arraignment in the Washington court later today. Many Republicans, elected officials and voters have unabashedly backed Trump, seeking to portray the charges against him as a politically motivated prosecution and a Democratic plot to derail his re-election bid. The indictment marks a historic moment for a nation less than 250 years old. The first time a former president has faced criminal charges for trying to overturn the very bedrock of democracy, a free and fair election. Despite the charges, Trump leads Republican polling by more than 30 points. As we said, nothing prevents criminal defendants from campaigning or taking office, even if they are convicted. Trump took to Truth Social, his social media platform, to thank his followers following this latest indictment and said he has never had so much support on anything before. In his all-caps post, Trump reiterated claims of corruption in the U.S. over the past 3 years. He said, "America is a nation in decline, but we will make it great again, greater than ever before. I love you all."
January 6th was a tragic day, and I've spoken and written about it extensively. I have nothing to hide. By God's grace, I believe we did our duty that day. Fulfilled the oath that I'd taken to the Constitution and to the American people. And the Constitution is quite clear about the role of the Vice President in the counting of electoral votes. It essentially says the Vice President presides over a joint session of Congress where the electoral votes that are certified by the states shall be opened and shall be counted. And irrespective of the indictment, I want the American people to know that I had no right to overturn the election. And then on that day, President Trump asked me to put him over the Constitution. But I chose the Constitution, and I always will. And I really do believe that anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. And anyone who asks someone else to put themselves over the Constitution should never be President of the United States again.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. The indictment was issued by a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail. In this case, my office will seek a speedy trial so that our evidence can be tested in court and judged by a jury of citizens. The attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021 was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. Since the attack on our capital, the Department of Justice has remained committed to ensuring accountability for those criminally responsible for what happened that day. This case is brought consistent with that commitment, and our investigation of other individuals continues.
If I weren't running, I would have nobody coming after me. Or if I was losing by a lot, I would have nobody coming after me. They wouldn't be coming after me. I immediately cancel every single open borders policy of the Biden administration and stop the invasion of criminals in many cases coming into our country. We will crush crooked Joe Biden, the most crooked president in the history of our country by far, and also grossly incompetent, doesn't know what he's doing. He's destroying our country. We will win the election big, and we will make America great again.
We will win the election big and we will make America great again. That's Trump for you. What happens next? All eyes will be on his arraignment in that Washington court later tonight. Time for us to take a quick break here on Global Lens. Don't go anywhere. We have lots more for you on the other side.
Gautam Adani, one of the richest men in the world, or a business honcho, accused of manipulating the market.
अदानी जी 609 नंबर से दूसरे नंबर तक कैसे पहुंचे? सिर्फ एक सवाल पूछा, नरेंद्र मोदी जी, आपका अदानी जी से रिश्ता क्या है?
He has given the space, the railways, the airport, which he has no experience also. So the country's interest has been compromised.
Government has been very clearly supporting few industrial groups, including Adani's industrial group.
Target Adani, streaming now. Chat GPT. It can generate codes and human-like responses through text, write stories, and do a lot more.
I work in a newsroom with anchors, researchers and scriptwriters, graphic artists, producers, video editors, camera crew. But does a newsroom really need them today?
All of us have to think about unique and distinctive value addition that cannot be automated or repeated or replaced by a machine.
ChatGPT may kill many companies.
A human has to be in the loop with an ability to control this.
Dark Side of the Boom. Streaming now.
BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection. The Warship Killer. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
मैं इमरान अहमद खान नियाजी सबके दिल से हल्फ उठाता हूँ.
When Imran Khan came initially into politics, he thought his personal popularity would be sufficient for him. It didn't happen.
The retired military generals are openly saying that Imran Khan is a better choice.
Imran Khan may have bitten a bit too much, more than what he can chew.
Implosion. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Let's now turn our attention to Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe's office has said the president plans to press ahead with his quest for the full implementation of the 13th Amendment as part of his reconciliation efforts with the country's minority Tamil community. The minority Tamil community in Sri Lanka has been demanding the implementation of the 13th Amendment that provides for devolution of power to it. The 13th Amendment was brought in after the India-Sri Lanka Agreement of 1987. It created 9 provinces as devolved